All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. All right, this interview we've had to postpone a few times due to schedules and due to the fires in California. I'm glad we're finally getting to it. Even though Jimmy is on the road right now in Austin, Texas, with George Lynch and Lynch Mob, he's been part of that band for quite some time. But I think most people know Jimmy Danda, my guest today, best for his time in the Bullet Boys. I've counted that he's been in the Bullet Boys four times. We'll have to confirm that with him and find out if there could ever be a fifth time. I mean, these are the hard hitting questions that you guys tune in to find out. I'm looking forward to catching up with Jimmy Danda right after this.
Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody out there can waste time without
All right, here he is, Jimmy Danda.
Hey,
Hey, Jimmy.
how are you?
I'm glad that you could do this. I'm glad to see you. And Jimmy, I'll say you are one of the nice guys in this business, and I'm going to explain where I come to that conclusion. But I want to talk about where we first met, and this is something that not everybody would know or remember, and it's certainly not out on the road these days. The first time we met was at a little club called CBGB's in New York City,
Wow.
and here it is,
Wow.
a long time ago. I'm going to say that's 91.
I gotta say that is 91 because that's for the Freak Show record. Yeah.
Mhm. And you were on the Poison tour, and Poison, someone was sick on the tour, and they decided to take a day off. And you tell me someone had the idea, let's go play CBGB's.
That was the manager, Dave Kaplan wanted. He knew that club was a very historic club in the punk community, and it was the birthplace of a lot of great bands. The Ramones being one of them, but Blondie came out of there. A lot of just amazing bands. Anyway, so he said, "You guys, this would be a good thing for you guys if you did it." And they took some talking into with the rest of the guys, but I remember I really enjoyed just being there and soaking it in. And of course, it was as advertised. It was as punk as you can get. I mean, it smelled like you exactly like you would have thought it would. And the story that we shared was that there was a dog that the owner or somehow lived there, and
Mhm.
um and I'll never forget sending him, my tech was setting up drums and I was there with him because I wanted to be there the whole day. And then the dog came on stage and I remember like thinking like there's a dog on stage, like I wonder if someone's going to get him. And then at one point the dog took a dump right next to my floor tom. And then I remember asking like someone, I go, excuse me, I go, the dog's in here taking a dump. And then from somewhere in the back, there's just a voice over the PA goes, yeah, and they said his name, he lives here, don't worry about it. And I remember the dump stood there for as long as I could remember. So again, adding to the mystique of CBGB's, it was absolutely awesome.
Well, the owner was Hilly Crystal, and he was known for this dog. And I'm sure I saw the dog that day, as I did many days visiting CBGB's. And a lot of bands have that similar story. I think it's
Yes.
cool for you coming out of California to get to play, New York City's most legendary,
Yeah.
dive bar. You played the
Right.
Whiskey. You played all the places on your way up in Hollywood. So it's cool that you had that experience. It was a fun show, and as I was talking about it last night, looking at the picture, I thought maybe there was 100 people there who could tell that
Oh,
story.
I that's generous. That's totally generous. I mean, if there was 40 people there, I don't. I mean, honestly, I don't think there was more than that.
Yeah, I last night I think I said 50, but yeah, it's one of those fun moments in time that
Yeah.
people share. So fast forward all these years later, I've seen you play in different bands. I saw you play with George Lynch over the time, and I definitely have seen you play other shows with the Bullet Boys. But so it turns out we're both on the road, and this isn't that long ago, 4th of July of last year.
Yep.
And as people know, I tour manage a Stephen Piercy band, and I chose Bloss. I brought Bloss to Stephen, Bloss Elias of Slaughter, who was on that same tour when you played CBGBs, that was Bullet Boy Slaughter and Poison, which is
That's how long I've known Bloss, though, just so people know.
a long time. Yeah, small. It's
Yeah.
a small world in this business, and so um, we all know that when Bloss got the gig, that every year between November and December, Bloss becomes trans,
Right.
a Siberian. He joins the trans.
I love Siberia.
You were going with it for a minute. He joins. He's part of the Trans Siberian Orchestra, and
Yes.
so we knew that we would have to get somebody to fill in, and we didn't exactly know who. So we go to this outdoor show. It's on my channel, the whole video, and you can
Oh,
see it. And you guys played in a torrential downpour. It was
yeah.
insane that you guys continued. I would not have let Steven on. I told them there's no way that I will let Steven go on that stage um, in the condition it was.
Honestly, I was waiting for somebody to come out and give us the high sign, but
Mhm.
it never happened. So we just kept playing, and I kept thinking, well, if I was in danger, I think somebody would come out and go, dude, stop. So since nobody came out, I thought, okay, well, I'm not in danger. But apparently, we could have had a real bad situation during that day. But I'm so glad you filmed it, and Bloss actually filmed some of it too, which I was grateful for him to do that. But I'll tell you what was awesome is that from that show, because I remember, like I said, I've known Bloss for a long time, and he had an injury, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes, he was
and
running and he collapsed his lung. It was right before that show.
yeah, and I remember both he and you walked up to me and said, "Wait a minute, if you had to, could you have filled in today's dates?" And I went, "Oh yeah, I could have, I mean, it would have been a really rough version, but I could have done those songs." And they both you guys went like, because you knew he was struggling, he was hurt, fairly bad, and so that way, and then of course, then I don't know how many weeks later, Bloss, I see Bloss on my phone, and usually we talk about running and about running shoes and about health things and stuff because he's in great shape, and I try to be more like him. But and then once I saw that call, and then I knew I think this is to fill in for him, and then of course then he went and did. He also had I think his anniversary too during that time period, which was nice
We had
that
yeah,
I got
right
to help out.
before
Yeah,
the Trans Siberian, he had a wedding anniversary that he locked into
yeah,
traveling, and he couldn't get out of it. And so, yeah, that day when I'm watching you play, and you guys play, I remember watching you played "When Heaven Comes Down,"
oh yeah.
and another crazy one. And George said if we would have kept going, I would have got to "Rain." I mean, you, you guys
The-
played all the Waterworks
although,
greatest,
yeah, yeah, that's
and
funny.
it did get too unsafe where it did have to
Yeah.
stop. Your bass player was getting shocked. His gear was done. I mean, it
Yeah.
was tough.
Go
The sad
figure.
thing is, well,
Go
not
go ahead,
sad thing.
finish
The
it.
good thing is, the weather came back. 20 minutes later, it was a beautiful sunshiny day.
Yeah. That head that we thought of Jaron Galino, the bass player for Lynch Mob, his head was just, I mean, they poured it upside down and water just came out.
Yep.
It's an orange bass head. And they let it dry out. And I'm telling you, Orange gets a 5 gold star on this one. I don't know how much time later, it had been dry for a while. They plugged it in just for the hell of it. They plugged the cable in, they hit the standby off, and it was right there. That amp still worked perfectly fine. Incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Testament to good amp craftsmanship, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but so yeah, that day I thought about it because Bloss probably should have not taken that trip. He
Yeah.
didn't tell me until the night before. I said, "Are you sure you can play?" And what you normally do is you look at the bill, see who else is there. The night
Mm,
before,
right.
funny enough, was Slaughter,
Hmm.
and when I saw you were there, I said, "I bet Jimmy knows these songs." At
For
least
the most
I've
part.
heard them.
Right.
You know, growing
Right.
up in California, Mark Torian was in Rat
Yeah.
at one point, and we'll talk a little about that. But so I asked you if you do. He said, "Yeah, I could do it." And I went back to Bloss and we were talking, and I said, "I think Jimmy might be the guy." Now we have to see if Steven has a vibe with him because
Right.
that's really Steven has this connection, and he either
Yep.
has it or he doesn't.
That's right.
Um, and so I said, "Jimmy, why don't you come in and say hello to Steven?" And you came in, and Steven was really happy to see you and was pretty animated. And I
Yeah.
said, this could be a home run. And the other reason that I thought, Jimmy, that you were such a good choice is because not just because of how great your drumming is, but because I with Blas not being there, I wanted someone else from the era that
Right.
people know and who plays with style because Blas has a style, you have a
Hmm.
style, and I thought that fans would be excited to keep sort of that mystique of the era, have those kind of guys. And so, next thing you know, we're on the phone and we're booking flights. And I used to say when you're putting a band together, I would rather pick four guys that I could sit in a car with for 5 hours
Yeah.
than maybe even the most amazing musician in the world because it doesn't matter how good someone is. You go sit in a car with Yngwie Malmsteen for 5 hours.
Yeah,
And
we've all heard those stories.
yeah, you toured with him, didn't you?
Well, we've done dates where we were alongside with him. So yeah, we would hear all the stories, and the texts, or the people at the venues would just be shell shocked when he would leave.
Yeah, and so when you do this enough, you want like-minded people
Hmm.
around. And so anyway, everyone just hit it off with you, and we were so happy. And as much as we love Blas, it was almost a little sad at the whiskey when we knew, well, this will be the last show with Jimmy for a while. You did get the Bobby Blotzer seal of approval, though, right?
So again, because I've known the guys, and we'll talk about that rat show with Terrain, but yeah, because I've known Bobby a very long time, and Bobby has always been good to me. He's shown me love when a lot of people didn't show me love at a dark time period of my life. So I have a very special place in my heart for him, and I didn't want there to be some weird thing where he found out that I was playing shows and I didn't talk to him. So I called him. I texted him first. I said, "Hey," I said, "Do you have a minute?" And he says, "Absolutely, give me a call." And so I called him up, and we just start rapping. And I said, "Dude," I go, "I just want to let you know, I got an offer to go fill in, because Bloss is the drummer." I said, "I'm gonna go fill in with your old singer, with Piercy." And he goes, "Dude," he goes, "That's gonna be great. You're gonna have a great time." And then he gave me just one, at the end of the conversation, and after we talked, and he goes, "Just do me a favor, fucking play that one riff. I can't remember on the top of the head right now, but he goes, play that one drum fill right, please." He goes, "It's a backwards drum roll." And I go, "I got it, I got it." And I remember I learned the track. But yeah, then he said, "Go and have some fun." And so that was nice to do that because, again, I think in most respect, drummers in general, we kind of have a different energy with each other. I mean, I respect my fellow drummers extremely because we've kind of been through the ring, if you will, with the jokes, and with, what do you call someone who hangs around musicians, a drummer, all that kind of good stuff. So I got a lot of respect and love for drummers. So I want to make sure that we were good there. And of course, I tried to do my best. And I called the Blas a couple times, and I said, "Blas, I go, I'm not going to play these things exactly like the record." He goes, "Dude," he goes, "just intros, get them right, get the endings right, all that inner working stuff." He goes, "When you can't do it," he goes, "but dude, just have fun." And so that was good advice, and that's what I did going in to play with you guys. And you guys are great. I mean, you run a great ship there. I mean, I loved, the energy when I got there was a lot of fun, and the band is absolutely stellar. I still text with Matt Thorne like every couple of days, just hello, how are you, that kind of stuff, because we got close because we were the only two guys in LA. So we rehearsed just he and I, bass and
Yep.
drums. So we got to get close, Matt. So I still have to check in with him. So again, great experience. Playing those Rat songs is absolutely, it's so hard to explain. When I started off, or I'm sorry, when Eric started off, Back for More, and then I hit the first hit, just that one hit, I got chills all over my body the first night, and I had to look up like, holy shit, this is real. This is happening right now. And by the time we came in and then the audience started, I mean, and it's incredible. The audience sings every line of every song. They sing the verses, they sing the choruses, they sing the outros, whatever it is. I mean, it is such a magnetic experience with that music. That Rat music is it's timeless. It's absolutely timeless. I put it up there with Van Halen. I put it up there with Cheap Trick, Aerosmith. It's just such, so when you're playing as a drummer, you feel it in your core. I'm happy I could help out and sit in for that little bit, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, and a great job you did, and it was a great time. I want to talk about a little bit about when you first saw Rap because I want to talk about the beginning of the Bullet Boys. Bullet Boys get signed in 1987, which is that right? I think
Well,
87,
it's
88.
actually 88. I joined them in December of 87.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, end of the year. So 88 you get signed and get a record out in the same year. I often say that for the bands who didn't get their record out until say 90,
Right.
you were in trouble. If you didn't
Yeah.
get it out until 91 or 92, you probably weren't going to get to ride that
Right.
wave. I
Right.
always say Jizzy Pearl said on this show about golden tickets. You there's only so many of these golden tickets. You
It's
want to get
true.
signed and you watch your friends get signed and you wonder um, is
Yeah.
it going to happen to me? So before we talk about the Bullet Boys beginning, let's talk about your beginning. Growing up, you started playing drums as a young kid. What gets you into it?
Well, it's it's funny because I've told the story so many times, and it kind of sounds silly now that I say it. But in gym class, I grew up in Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles. In gym class, a lot of the guys were playing grab ass and stuff, and I remember I was really uncomfortable with it. And I remember asking my guidance counselor if I could get out of it, and she said you have to take an elective, which is metal class. Working with metal, wood, and in on that list was music. And I remember which was really cool. She goes, you have the whole day to kind of go to each class and hang out in those classes and see what you like. I did like the wood class. There was some cool shit going on there. But I remember walking down this long corridor, this long hallway at Stevenson Junior High School, and I could hear the bass drum and snare work. It just sounded like holy crap. I'm like, I could be a drummer. Like that was crazy. So I walked in there and literally, I beeline for the drum department, the corner area there, and then my brother had already been playing guitar because I tried playing guitar a few years before, and I took my guitar to a teacher out there in Boyle Heights, and I remember bringing my acoustic guitar because I wanted to be Eddie Van Halen, like we all do. And I remember she said, "Well, put the guitar down. We're gonna go over on this board here the notes of the guitar and some chord structures and stuff." So I asked her, I go, "So when do I actually get to be Eddie Van Halen? When can you teach me that stuff?" And she said, "Oh, you're not gonna play the guitar for the first month." I was like, "Oh, I'm out of here." So I ended up leaving guitar lessons and giving my guitar back to my mom, and mom gave it to my brother. My brother picked it up. He was picking it up by himself. So then so now we had a little band. Me and my brother, we would just play, the beginning of Deep Purple, a Smoke in the Water. My brother wrote his first song, there in my bedroom, and it was funny because I was 13 years old, and I ended up signing with Bullet Boys 7 years later, which I know that really upset some musicians who had been struggling for a long time. Listen, I'm very blessed that I had this experience. I'm not, I don't ever brag about it or anything, but I was very, very blessed that I got to go and in such a short period of time. Like you said, we saw Rat in at the whiskey at the Troubadour. We saw Motley at the whiskey, and at Oddfellows Hall, and we saw those bands, Armored Saint and Wasp, at Perkins Palace and all these great establishments. So I got to see, to know that it was tangible. Everything that I saw those guys doing, you know, Armored Saint was up the street from us. They weren't that far from us. So, and they got signed, and then they were on tour. We saw Quiet Riot before they were Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot. They were Dubrow. It was Dubrow. And we saw that line, and it was just such an incredible experience to know that it was all possible by seeing those bands. So we got to, like you said, we saw it happen. We emulated it. We went in our room and we tried our best to play the parts like those guys did. So we were really lucky that we saw it.
Now you audition, right? How do you find out about it?
Bullet Boys.
Yeah.
So again, go up, and then we moved from Boyle Heights to a town called Montebello, and Mark Tureen was the big dog there. He was the guitar player, singer there. He had his own band called Tureen. This is like in 1983, 84, and I remember my brother wanted guitar lessons, so Mark started giving my brother guitar lessons, and that's how we met Mark. And he would come to my rehearsals, and he would always come to me, Jimmy D, bro, you're going to be like ready to tour someday. You're a really great drummer. And he liked my style and stuff. And sure enough, you know, uh, so Bullet Boys, a lot of people don't know, I don't know if they know this, but was King Cobra, Carmine Apice's band. The last lineup of King Cobra is Bullet Boys. So even though the guitar player Mick was the original guitar player in King Cobra, Mark came in after Marcy Free, and then Lonnie came in after Johnny Rod went to Wasp. So they banged around for a while, and then they demoed some stuff with Gene Simmons, and of course they just didn't have anything happen from that. And then they started their own thing, and they had a drummer that came in, and then unfortunately they ended up having a problem with him, and then he left. And then so they held auditions, and Mark asked me, he goes, Jimmy, because we just come because we need to feel, have bodies in there so it feels, people can feel the energy of, like, different styles of drumming. So I went and cut really haphazardly, like I wasn't sure, because I had a band that was kind of like, it was going to be like a Rage Against the Machine, but in 86, 87. And, and again, I'm like 18, 19 years old. And so I go there because Mark asked me to. And of course, he's a good friend of mine at the time. I really care about that guy. So I go, absolutely. I don't realize that when I go in jam, I did really good, and they liked it. And then they asked me to join right there. And I said, oh no, I'm just here because Mark told me to be here. And then they all got pissed at me, and they're like, well, you're fucking wasting our time. And I was like, oh shit, like I felt like an idiot for doing that. But as I'm leaving, the manager, Dave Kaplan, who's still my manager for the most part, when I need stuff done, he'll take care of it for me. And he walked right up to me and he goes, Jimmy, and he goes, what would it take to get you in this band? I'm like, Dave, nothing. And he goes, how would you like free drums and free cymbals? I go, I'm in. So that was it. So I joined the band, and literally in January, we started rehearsing at what we called the piss room, because it was right next to like a homeless encampment that was by these railroad tracks. So they would pee against the wall, which would actually, the smell, the ammonia would seep through the wall, so it smelled like piss in our room.
Mm.
Piss room. And then so we started doing local shows and stuff. And I remember very specifically, people talking about that this band could actually do something. And I was like, wow, I'm just, I'm impressed that anybody cares about anything I'm a part of. But it was just a very cool experience. We did 7 shows, and then we got signed to Warner Brothers.
Do you remember the show where you got signed?
Well, it wasn't a show per se. We were doing. Dave Kaplan had set up every day we were doing a showcase. So it was like
Okay.
Geffen. It was Capital. Oh no, Geffen, EMI. I think. I can't think. There was like 4 or 5 of all the majors, and on the third or fourth day was Warner Brothers, and Ted Templeman came down to the piss room. Okay, sat there on the floor in front of us because we didn't have any chairs. He sat there on the floor, and we played 7 songs, and thank God he stopped us at 7 songs, because we didn't have any more songs. We only then from that point we had cover songs. He stopped at 7 songs, and we're like, and then he goes, come down, because we had a little drum riser set up, and we all came down off of it. And then he begins to tell us, here's why I think you should sign with Warner Brothers. And I mean, we were just like, what are you talking about? Fucking contract, let's go right now. But he went on to explain that, you know, Warner Brothers likes to build bands, likes to give them legs and let them grow and try, and become who they're going to become long term. And it was just that, he was old school, the Van Halen, the Doobie Brothers, the Montrose, he knew kind of how to let a band be a band. And that's the cool part about working with Ted Templeman.
Yeah, Ted Templeman, obviously a legend. Van Halen, probably what he's best known for.
Absolutely.
You guys obviously influenced by Van
Yeah.
Halen.
Yeah.
I had Mick Sweeta on the show, and he talked about the experience working with Ted Templeman. But I want
Yeah.
to know what yours was. How did you feel? And while I'm at that, I got a question from a Patreon. I want to make sure I get it. This is from Matt. He said, "Did the band ever record basic tracks live, all in the same room? And if not, did Templeman do a lot of comping of your drums?"
See that's again, that's what makes Teddy so special, is that no, I never we always did all basic tracks together. Every record you ever heard of us, is the rhythm guitar, bass guitar, and drums are all being laid down at the same time. And then Mick would go in and do some overdubs here and there. Um, and then Mark would do scratch vocals. And especially on the first album, Mark did a lot of scratch vocals that ended up being on the record. That's how like he was incredible his voice was just, I mean, just off the charts, amazing. And so a lot of that stuff, that was, I mean, we did the first record in total. I think it was done completely in 2 months,
Wow.
and that, for those now, now guys make records, it takes years for them to make
Mhm.
records now. So I again, it was just cool to play all in a room together. We never used a click track. I mean, I never did any overdubs. Lonnie
Was
never
that
did any
rare,
over.
Jimmy?
Huh?
Was that rare at the time, or were a lot of bands doing that?
Oh no, that's extremely rare at the time.
Mhm.
That was during that beginning time period where studios were becoming these scientific, thinking processes of how they can make things bigger, fuller, and doubling up on this and tripling up on this, and putting together drum machine parts that they would utilize as the drums. And it was a tough for me in the beginning with doing the first Bullet Boys record was tough because I was so nervous and I'm so young. And I remember just seeing Ted Templeman's name on the back of every Van Halen record, which is like one of my favorite bands ever. I was really nervous. And then, the first day doing, we were doing this song called Kissin' Kitty from the first album. And I learned this after the fact, but they kept saying, okay, go ahead, take one. And then they would, you would hear the talk back, button being pressed, and Ted would go, hold on. And we'd stop and look around like, holy shit. Because it's just all the music goes away and all you hear is the voice in your head of Ted Templeman or Jeff Hendrickson. And so at one point he stopped everybody and said, hey, you guys, why don't you go take a break? Give me 10 with Jimmy. And I was like, oh my God, like they're going to replace me. They're going to get another drummer. They're going to get Kenny Aaron off the counter or something. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, damn it. I was so bummed out. And he came out and he sat next to me. I had the piano behind me with a little piano bench. And, then a guy came out with a 6-pack of Heineken beer. And we sat there and he just asked me questions about my growing up and where I'm from. And he told me where he was from and, his start, that he was a drummer, that he played in a band called Harper's Bazaar, and I was like, oh my God, you're kidding. No way. And he started telling me, yeah, I always have a great connection with my drummers. I was close to Alex Van Halen, and he goes into with Bobby LeKine and blah, blah, blah. So he finishes up and he goes, okay. And he goes, how you feeling? I go, good. He goes, okay. He goes, let's go after it again. And then I count off to blah to, and I start playing the track, and the song ends. Okay. That's the track you hear on the record right now. After this conversation, that's the track you hear on that record. And I talked to him sometime later, and I said, Ted, what was that all about? And he goes, Jimmy, he goes, you were so nervous. Your energy, your tempo was out the window. He goes, you were playing so hard. It was just brash, and there was no sexiness in there. And he goes, I had to calm me down. He goes, I just had to take away this. You were looking, I'm up here, you're down here. You're looking at me like, And he goes, I wanted to even it out and know that it's us together. And he goes, and the beers probably helped to calm me down too, which is true. And so that, that again, kind of knowing how to see somebody who's struggling a little bit and then helping them to calm down and get a good performance out. That's again what he's really known for.
Yeah, what a great story. And everyone has their own experience, with
Yeah.
their producer and with
Yeah.
people. And so it's great to hear one of your stories. And you relate to this person. And
Yeah.
so record takes 2 months, as you said. Record comes out. It seems like it hits pretty fast, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really amazing because I felt like, it went out, in Los Angeles, we had KNAC that was playing the record in full rotation, front and back. They were playing the whole record. Okay. And I remember, like, we went from playing to, 10 people a night at some club in Sacramento. And then we got to Texas, or we got to Florida, and then, or Boston. I can't remember what it was. This is after about 2 months of it being on the radio, and there was a line around the block to get into the clubs that we were playing at. I mean, it was so surprising. I was like, "Who's playing here tonight? That there's a line for?" And the tour manager goes, "Jimmy, that's for you guys." I was like, "What the hell?" And it turned out that Smooth Up had grabbed some traction. It was out there doing some good numbers at AOR, at Album Oriented Radio, and it was an amazing thing to see that we played to nobody, struggling, with this unknown name. Because remember, those guys had been out with Carmine Peace. They were playing arenas with Kiss, opening for Kiss. So the three guys, Mark, Lonnie, and Mick had already kind of been there, and here they were trying to make it happen again. I'm just a kid hanging on, going, yeah, this is fun. So the fact that I saw myself go from an unknown drummer to be in Modern Drummer magazine and to be hanging out with, big time rock and rollers, and I was just like, wow, this is so crazy and it's so cool. I just never thought it would happen. I just, wanted to get out and play some drums and have some fun.
Smooth Up In You starts playing on MTV. Once that happens, some bands are headbangers ball bands and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But if you make it into that dial MTV, and for young people watching, they had an 800 number, and every day from
That's
4
right.
to 5, kids
Yeah.
like me would come home from school and we'd call dial MTV. I often think dial MTV might have been more sophisticated than some elections that we've had. Um,
I think you're right. I think you're right about that. Yeah.
Somehow the votes were counted at dial MTV,
Right.
but although that was the beginning of street teams
Right.
and getting and record company having a million phones and doing everything you can to
Right.
push your artists. But what I like to remind people and tell people who weren't there is that you weren't just going up against Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard and the other metal bands. You were on there with Madonna and Michael Jackson and
Yeah.
whoever was the biggest artist.
Yeah. And again, but it showed you like how big the machine can get, because I mean, I remember, seeing, going to record stores and seeing piles of the new Metallica record in the back, because they're going to be selling out of Metallica like in this week. And it was just an amazing experience to see this machine that can take a band from absolute obscurity to just the biggest, the household name. It's just kind of amazing to see that the labels used to be able to do that. Of course, now you and I know that that doesn't exist any longer. There's no more label of that in that way.
Yeah, no, not at all. You guys got out on arena tours. I remember seeing Nassau Coliseum, New York City, Bulletboys Winger, and Cinderella.
Yeah.
And you guys were on a lot of the right tours.
Yeah.
Want to be seen. Tell me about some of the people you were touring with on that first record.
So I'll tell you what, though, my first arena experience ever, we were somewhere. I want to say we were somewhere in Texas, and we got a call from the booking agent or from the manager. I can't remember exactly, but they said you guys got to pack up tonight, and you guys got a deadhead to Green Bay, to Wisconsin. I can't think of what venue that was. Shite. It doesn't matter anyway. Opening for Cheap Trick. And
Right.
that was the very first time we'd ever been, or I'd ever been in the arenas, was opening for Cheap Trick. And we've been in clubs, 500 to 1,000, and we were selling those out, like crazy. And here we were driving, hauling ass, so much so that because we had to take turns driving to get, that's old rock and roll. That's what, the Beatles did. We just talked about Beatles were in a van at one point, doesn't,
Mhm.
so any bands coming up, the Beatles were in a van, so don't put down the van experience. It's fucking magical. So just remember that. So the floorboard of the gas pedal, under the gas pedal on the RV that we had broken, and it was now just open, and cold air was coming through. And our tour manager was driving, and we had to go take turns throughout the night getting towels and wrapping him around his feet because his right foot was freezing, was getting cold. So there were no breaks because we had literally no time. I mean, we had to be there like now. So we drove up, and I'll never forget pulling up there, and I remember just it was just a magical, like, this is the arena that we're playing in tonight. Like, oh my god, this is crazy. And then walking in, and then Cheap Trick's already on stage, and I remember like just trying to be cool. I mean, this is
Mhm.
what the band you have, live at Budokan, in your living room that you read every night at bed, or you're like looking at the pictures and listening to the music, and it was just like, wow, this is really happening right now. This is fucking crazy. And then from that experience, I learned the power of the bass drum hit when the lights go down in an arena. And what I mean by that is the lights go down, I get on the drums, and I hit the bass drum, and the audience goes, and it's, I'm telling you to know that I just invoke that type of energy with my bass drum. It
Hmm.
changes you like physically, like you feel like, that's why people do drugs, I think, or at least that's why I probably did drugs for a while, is that was such a high and such a rush. It was incredible. And you become friends with these guys. They're like, you get their number, they give you your number, you're calling Bunny Carlos, you're talking to them after at different times. And it's just, it's such a crazy experience. But so that was great. Again, like you just mentioned, the Long Cold Winter Tour was the best tour I've ever been on.
Well,
Uh,
before we get to the Long Cold Winter, I want to point out that show with Cheap Trick is like an early Christmas present. That
yeah,
show was December 16th, 1988,
yeah.
36 years ago, and the venue was the Brown County Arena in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Crazy.
There it is. See, I didn't
Yeah.
even know that. I just remember the experience of like hauling ass to get there because we can't miss this show. And God, I'm telling you, I just I remember like I flashed back to my childhood, which wasn't that long before that, but sitting in my room and playing drums and learning the beginning of Ain't That a Shame? Do dig it, good it, doing that, which he, did a Ringo Starr thing, but still, that was just such a great experience to know that that's our first outing, that's our first coming out party, is opening for Cheap Trick, and they took good care of us. They were so sweet to us, and so but that okay, so there's that, and then we do Poison and Slaughter. That was a great tour as well. We did a lot of co-headlining. We did a special one that I wish I had a video of us and Living Color, because we both came out at the exact same time. Cult of Personality was killing it, and Smooth Up was right behind it, and so we did a co-headlining couple of shows. And I remember just like, I wanted to prove myself because that band is just absolutely just lighting the bottle of an experience. And so I remember like, you were having to cut heads, you were having to really show that what you had, so that was a great run. And but again, the Long Cold Winter Tour, was 6 months, and becoming literally, I mean, I still talk to Fred Corey from Cinderella, the drummer, on a weekly basis since then.
Mhm.
That's the friendships that I made then. I check in every now and again with Kip Winger and Red Beach, and Rod Morgenstein was teaching up at Berkeley in Boston, where my son went to school. So I mean, it's like a really weird connection with those guys. And even like I said, you know, uh, uh, the that experience creates kind of friendships all the way down the line, where you know people from that tour, and people that who you still are in contact with. That to me is great. That after all these years, 36 years, I think, is that what you said? Yeah, because that was right
Yeah,
after that, right?
36 years since the Cheap Trick show. It's crazy. And,
Yeah,
you talk about the Slaughter Tour. Here we are, at
yeah,
that show with Blas this many years later. It's funny how many people you will see in your life. And look, we're fortunate because a lot of people start to pass away.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
Jeff LeBar from Cinderella comes to mind. There's
yeah.
people. It's not an easy life. Rock and
Mm-mm.
roll life isn't easy either, but all
Yeah,
life gets hard. So you're
yeah,
out there on the road pushing it. For the Love of Money comes out as well.
yeah,
Also takes off on MTV. OJ's cover, but people really like it. It reaches a new audience. People who
yeah.
probably never heard the OJ's in their
Right,
life.
right.
And that song was good for commercials, and it was good for promotion. Do you think that maybe it was too long between records because the next record comes out in 91?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Even though that first tour was a very long tour, I mean, that was a solid 14 months. I mean, we were gone for a really long time on that first record. And unfortunately, I mean, and this is no secret. Our singer had lost his voice. He had got nodules on his throat and had to go in and get surgery. And that was a bummer because for several reasons, we asked him to take better care of his voice, and he just, unfortunately, Mark was in his own world, and just didn't really kind of take care of his voice. And it was really tough because, for me, I can change a snare drum head. I can get new sticks. I can get new cymbals. Mick can get new strings. Lonnie can get a new amp. It does download, but Mark can't get anything new on this. And so, we used to, tell him, dude, please just take better care of yourself. And he's like, fuck, bro, because I gotta live my fucking life, And there's both sides to it, but it was a bummer because he went in for surgery and then he had a recovery time that was, I think, I want to say 6 months. So there was a long downtime where we started writing, me, Mick, and Lonnie, the Freak Show record, and we wrote almost the entire record, I want to say, while Mark was recovering from that experience. So the record musically was, I mean, I have demo tapes of songs from that record that were never released that were that I mean, if I played them for you, you would go, dude, this is a fucking great track. It just has no vocals on it. And again, like you just said, what is it? Out of sight, out of mind. So the longer we take to make this record, people are moving on to other bands and other experiences musically, and it was a tough road at the time, and we couldn't really force it out. We couldn't make Mark sing at the time, so it was difficult. And then so by the time it comes out, we're like kind of going against the grain of what the hair metal movement is a part of. We got like dark songs like THC Groove and Hang On St. Christopher that are really dark and groovy, that are, just aren't a part of what the scene is anymore. And then of course we both know that grunge is percolating at that point, and they're starting to see a lot of bands. And what's crazy is that Alice in Chains was our opening band in Seattle. We did a week run in Seattle, I want to say, and they were the opening band and so I became good friends with those guys. I was in a band with Mike Starr before he had passed away, just because of our friendship from that time period. So again, we were trying our best to get music out. We were trying our best to be healthy. We were trying our best to get, clean and sober. We were trying our best, but at the time there were just too many things that were coming up over. There's a wave of all these other things that were happening, and so by the time the record gets out, we really don't have any traction. Things have changed so drastically. It's just now we're just all right. Let's see if we can have a career at this point. So it was
Now
tough.
you did keep Ted Templeman for this record. He did produce this record as well. Was it a different experience? Did you feel did anyone want to change the direction? Would he be against changing direction?
Well, again, what's so funny is that I remember like being in there listening back to playback of some ideas, and Teddy not really liking them, and he wasn't sure where we were going. And then Jeff Hendrickson, who was the engineer for the record, we would work on stuff late. Sometimes I would go there and hang out with him. I'm fairly certain Mick was there doing a lot more, interjecting or helping to put more things um, into the mix. But it wasn't until Mark came in and really sat down. We went over songs with him. He started like coming up with ideas, and Mick started helping him with the melodies. And Lonnie's really great with melodies, Um, so that started to you could see the record form, and then I know. Here was a nice part about that. Ted didn't want us to remake that first record, but Warner Brothers as a whole was looking for Smooth Up. They, like every label at the time was looking for the next that same song, but
Yeah.
a
If
newer
it's
version
called
of that same song.
Boxset.
Yeah, it's just it's the nature of the beast. I get that, but we didn't have a Smooth Up in that sense, and I know that they felt a little, yeah, like okay, well, we'll put this thing out because we had a large record deal with them, but when we listen back to it, a listening party with Roberta Peterson, who signed us with her brother, which is Ted Templeman's sister, and we were all there. Ted Templeman at the end goes, "This is fucking great. I love this record." I mean, everyone loved the record at that time. It just again, there was no way for us to fit that new sound that we had into the area that we had just come from. We didn't have a ballad on the record. We weren't getting more glam. We were moving away from it, getting kind of more groovy, dark grooviness. And that again, I don't know if people really caught on to it.
Well, maybe even especially at that time, a little ahead of its time. Warrant is putting out Cherry Pie, and
Right,
Poison's got Ride the Wind, and then you have a dark Tom Waits cover.
right.
Not it's not not the same kind of thing.
No, Yeah.
Now you go out to promote that record. I feel like there was still a little buzz, but obviously getting harder. Did you feel it when you're on the road? Like, uh-oh, did you know this might be coming to an end?
There was a moment I recall where we were playing because we were doing a co-headline with Great White at the time,
Mhm.
and I remember we were playing a venue, and which I normally like, aren't we playing that like the big one over there? Don't we? And
Mhm.
no, now we're downsized, and then I want to say like three doors down or something like a door maybe or three in the band name was playing the big dog place, and I remember like, well, that's weird, like that band just came out and they're already playing that the bigger place. And then of course there's the story that, because I played also for Janie Lane, drums for him, but he talks about the story, and I remember I always thought that was interesting, where he said he used to go into his where were they, not with Chrysalis, who were they with?
Columbia.
Columbia, and he had, it was him on the front, or meaning the band, and then he walked in one day and it was Alice in Chains and their shit was thrown out in the back. There was definitely, you could see that was taking place out there. That you could see the shirts, the swag that kids were wearing. It wasn't as much as what you just saw a few years ago. Now it was Alice in Chains, it was Soundgarden, it was Pearl Jam. You were seeing that stuff happening, and so yeah, you definitely felt like, oh, okay, I think something's changing here. But to the extent that it changed, I don't think anybody was, because everyone thought, well, this playpen is big enough for everybody.
Right.
That's what everyone thought, at least. But only the big dogs survived. The Van Halens, the Guns N' Roses. Those are the only bands that made it over that hump. But I never disliked grunge. I thought grunge was a beautiful experience for me personally. I love Nirvana. I love those bands. I thought they had something really worthwhile that was happening, and so I enjoyed it. Did I miss the money? Yeah. I would have liked to have kept the money and still, but things change.
It's sort of amazing that this third album, ZaZa, comes out, because it comes
Yeah.
out in 1993. At
Right.
this point, uh, um, grunge is definitely on
Oh
the
yeah.
forefront, and
Right.
these kind of bands are not. I think maybe the idea was, well, uh, we've changed direction a little bit. Maybe Bullet Boys isn't just a hair band. The second record was a little darker. Maybe we could portray this as being something different. Ted Templeman, again, you keep him for a third record. Seems
Right.
like if you stay with Warner, you could stay with Ted. What was the experience making this record? Was it more difficult?
Yeah, it was definitely, but in this sense, the band really stopped being a band at that point. And it's a story we've heard amongst band, and this experience is not unique. But we didn't hang out. I was never really hanging out with the guys because I was, I had my own friends, and I remember they got mad at me one time. I just found this so funny. I just found this out maybe in 2019 or something like that. Bulletboys tried to replace me after the album came out. Because of that fact, because I would not hang out with them on the weekends. I went back to Montebello with my mom, and like, to live at my mom's place with my brother, and Mondo and Shock and Bobby D and all my friends were all there. So they got pissed at me that they auditioned other drummers to come in and play. And unfortunately, and this is from Lonnie, who's honest, and I believe him. He goes, Jimbo, he goes, nobody had a groove like you, dude. And so we had to just swallow that pill and just go fucking. Our drummer just hangs out in Montebello now, and that's just the way I have to deal with it. So, um, I
You were
forgot. I'm sorry.
probably
What was
smart. You were
huh?
probably smart. You were probably sometimes hanging out with each other only leads to more problems. Sometimes a little
Well,
distance isn't bad.
and that's true. I felt like, every now and again it just gets too tight. You're on a bus all day long. You do interviews all day long. It's just the energy was just different by that point too. But I forgot what the question was. I'm sorry.
No, we were talking about if this record was difficult, the making of it, and
Right.
and then when it
Oh,
comes out, do you promote this record?
oh, absolutely. We go on tour for the record. We do a ground run, which is kind of tough because there's no money involved at all. So we're in our own vehicles at this point. No, this is that part in the movie when, you know the band's playing. This is true. We played a bowling alley where there were more people paying attention to bowling than they were to us.
Mhm.
So that's, that's kind of like towards the end there. But the making of the record, that's what I was going to say. Nobody got along really anymore. Everybody was kind of in their own world. People just brought in their own songs, and people just wrote riffs, and then they would bring him in, and the whole band would listen to like whatever demos, because everybody had kind of a little working recording setup in their own apartments or their houses. Mick actually had a real studio in his apartment. Lonnie had a DAT player. I had an actual 8-track cassette, Tascam, and I'd write songs, and they'd all write songs, and then we'd bring it in. And it was just to fulfill the contract, I believe. Now looking back, it was just we had a contract to fulfill. And you can hear on that record, there's some great riffs. They should have just been really worked on more, and they just weren't. So
Yeah,
it was tough.
like you said, a fulfillment is
Yeah,
definitely a thing. You got another record in your contract and you
you got
can
to
get
do
paid
it.
for it. Well, you're going to do it. I wanted to ask you, did you ever think that because your band, the Bullet Boys, has got some brown Americans in it, and
Yep.
did you ever think that maybe because Mark didn't look like every blonde, blue-eyed, white singer, did you think it ever hurt the band, or do you think he ever felt that way?
I can't speak on behalf of him. I mean, he did share stuff with me before, but I don't want to share that because that's his
Mhm.
story. But I do. I never saw that personally. He did say that he felt that in his career. I won't get specific, but again, I can't live my life, in
What if?
that shadow. Yeah, I can't do that. And I went out and had a good time. I went out, and I'm very proud of my heritage. We're Mexican, Native American, and you know, um, I never felt it. If anything, I think for lead singers, because they're just lead singers and they're kind of all a little kooky in the head, he
Mhm.
might have got more about, just because he's the lead singer, more crap than anything else. But yeah, I never felt any of that racism, or whatever that might be. When we walked in a place, people were like, "Fucking, what's up?" We were the band, we were the party that came to visit, overnight, whatever we were doing. So I felt it was a lot of fun to. And remember, the '80s is a very different time period. You remember, people wanted to have what's to say that the drummer from Spinal Tap says, "Have
Yeah.
a good time all the time." That's what
Mhm.
we were about. That's what everyone was about. And of course, unfortunately, like everything else that's good, has to come to an end, and that's what happened.
I gotta ask you, the record title ZaZa, is the story true that that's your title?
Okay, it's so silly though. I had just seen Godfather 3,
Mhm.
and there's a guy in Godfather 3, his name is Joey Zaza. And I used to just walk around saying Zaza. It's just stupid, Zaza. And then they would go like, "What is that?" And I'm like, Zaza. And I would say it. And at one point they go, "That should be the name of the record." And it ended up being the name of the record. And honestly, it wasn't something I tried. I wasn't trying to say, you know what? This is a good name for a record. You should call it. It's just something. It's named after the Joey Zaza from Godfather 3. And I wish
Yeah,
it was named after somebody from the first Godfather, because that's the best one. But no, it's Godfather
yeah,
3.
you had to pick Godfather 3, which you got Bullet Boys 3 and Godfather 3. Maybe it
Shit.
was a little bit of a curse, but Joe Mantegna played Joey
That's
Zaza.
right. That's right.
He
You're
had a
right.
great restaurant in Burbank for a lot of years. He had a place called
Really?
Taste Chicago, a lot of
I
years.
know that. Yeah, I wish I'd have went.
Yeah, but that's so it was such a funny story, and it's one of those stories you wonder, could
Uh-huh.
that be true? And sure, sometimes when you're traveling and you're with a bunch of people, sometimes something that sounds funny rolls off your tongue. You say it a lot and you keep
Are you kidding
repeating
me?
it.
George has on his phone thousands of sayings and things he sees on the road that he stores on his phone. It's so funny.
We'll get to George before we wrap up. I can't
Yeah.
keep you all day, but
No, no,
so
yeah.
how does the Bullet Boys end the first time?
Ooh, I got to be honest. That was a difficult thing, because in the years when we were forming, I was the runt. I was the lowest on the totem pole, and I got a lot of shit. And I was, it was tough for me, and that's that's public knowledge. No big deal. I got a lot of shit, a lot of flack, because of the fact that I came in, did 7 shows, and then then I'm out with fucking Cheap Trick, and so I wasn't happy for the most part because I got a lot of ridicule. I got yelled at because I'd go hang out with Cinderella, and they would go, "Hey, where the fuck were you?" And I'd be like, "I was hanging out with Cinderella." Like, "Well, you're in this fucking band, dude. You should be hanging out," and I'd be like, "Whoa!" Like, I wasn't aware that I couldn't hang out with other people, So I got, I'd get in trouble from time to time, and so I was unhappy. And then I finally got into a place where I accepted everything how it was, and it was, So we had some unhappy, and we had happy because there was great tours and there was good money. Okay, so at the end there, the great tours go away. Hence, the great money goes away, but there's still all the unhappy is still there. So I remember there came a time that I just said, I called up the manager first, and then I called up Mick and I said, I'm leaving. I gotta be done with this. This is, it's just too. I have too much stress, and it's not fun for me anymore. I'd rather just and on top of that, we just had our son Max, so I really wanted to stay home and be with my son and help to raise him, which I ended up being a home father, and my wife went to work. So, at one point, I remember I felt this like once I made the decision to leave the band, I had this like I felt that it was lifting up all this stress and anxiety was coming off of me, and then we did our last show in LA. It was probably a club that held 300 people, and it was probably close to full. And I think we did like actually 3 or 4 shows in LA as the last of the shows. And again, Mark and Lonnie went on to go keep it going on for a while there. So, I said, go, I wanted everybody to have fun. I just couldn't be a part of it because I was not having fun. So, it was interesting to be able to walk away from it and, and feel that relief of it's like, oh, okay, now I can just kind of have fun and play music on my own and whenever I want, I can do it, and I'll get a regular day job, whatever, I'll teach drums, whatever. So, but yeah, it was necessary for me to leave because I was extremely unhappy.
And what did you do in those next years?
Again, I was a home father. I started with my son. I went back to my old 8-track cassette. I would just noodle songs and play just stuff around the house, and I started playing bass actually in a band for my brother because him and his drummer needed a bass player. So I played bass for a while, and I just kept everything really low key. I did 4 years just being a home father. My wife went to work. I took care of our son. And then in 99-ish, late 99, I'm working at Guitar Center, and I'm in drums. And I remember I get, you get things over the intercom, people, looking for somebody, they need something in pro audio. And then I'm there and I got a semi-full drum room. And then over the intercom, it says, Jimmy and drums, George Lynch on line 1. And I remember everyone in the drum department looking at me like, and I was like, I don't know. I didn't know George at the time. I'd never met him before. And hence that begins the next 25 years of, off and on 25 years, that is. And getting a call from George going, hey, dude, I heard are you available to play drums? I said, I am. And that was the first after 4 years playing drums was getting back into it was with George and Lynch Mob. So that was absolutely a godsend.
When you're working in Guitar Center, do people occasionally recognize you? Do you feel like I was on tour, now I'm doing this? Or do you feel like, you know what? I got bills to pay?
Well, a bit of both. I mean, I definitely, I listen. I am not afraid of a hard day's work. It's a part of I think of a good self esteem. I think it's good for the spirit, the soul. I don't care what you do, but if I have the choice, I'd rather play drums for money, of course. But it would be a little weird when someone would come in and say, "Aren't you? What's the drummer in Bulletboys?" And I go, "Yeah." And you work here now? And that's a little like, and then, of course, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I know who I am. I know it's all good. Nobody's going to take away, who I am. But it definitely, every now and again, it was a little like, wow, yeah, I was touring with, Ozzy, and now I'm here.
Mhm. Yeah, no, but a lot of people had to do it. I want to close the book on the Bulletboys for a second. So 99, you did a short reunion.
Yep.
2011, you did a short reunion.
Right.
2019 through 2022. Now these are the pandemic years. You
Yeah.
guys get back together. Now I've spoke to Mark about it. I've spoke to Mick about it. No one could find Lonnie, so I didn't speak to him about it. But I asked Mick when it was announced. I said, "Is this going to be a really short thing? And maybe should people buy your tickets now just in case?" And he said, "Yeah, I would buy your tickets." Um, Maybe knowing that this band has combusted
Yeah.
um, before. You played at the Whiskey. That's where it kicked off the reunion.
Yep.
And there were going to be a lot of dates with an original lineup of the Bulletboys and an original lineup of Bang Tango, which was cool because it fit with back in the day.
Yeah.
And suddenly, in 2022, there's a show at the Whiskey. To my knowledge, Lonnie doesn't show up,
Right.
which is the story that's been heard before. You and Mick said, well, then we're not going to play. Mark said, I want to do an acoustic show.
Yeah.
We got to give the fans an acoustic show. You guys said, I don't think the Bulletboys is an acoustic band, and I don't think this is a good idea, and we
Yeah.
should just wait. Am I saying it right?
You absolutely 100%. There was even discussion of bringing another bass player in for that night with literally, like, 10 hours notice. And listen, the reason that that band was successful is, and this is the honest to God truth, there's 4 members in that band, and that's it. And nothing against guys who have come in and have played after, because there's been a lot of musicians that have sat in with Bulletboys, and under the name Bulletboys. And when you take even one of those people, one of those ingredients out, it's not the same. It just isn't. So, I knew it. Mick knew it. Unfortunately, Mark, he, whatever is in his head, he just thought, I want to, no matter what, I want to play this show, even if it's just him by himself, which I think that's what it ended up being. But yeah, I mean, that was right. I mean, this thing could combust at any minute now, and we knew it like from day one. We knew it from day one.
I got the impression that you and Mick usually, not that you're siding with each other or agreeing, but
Right.
you both usually sort of leave at the same time. It seems like,
Roughly, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
each.
I quit. Well, I quit both times, first, but the second time, that time in COVID, I quit, and then I left them in a position that they still had a manager, they still had booking agents, and I got them a drummer to fill in shows until they could find a permanent guy. I left them in that position, and for whatever reason, they opted out. And I had Brian Tishy, who I'd call and said, Brian, will you please fill in? There's like 6 shows still in the books for like this little period, and then they're going to book all for during summer. And Brian was like, absolutely, I'm there, let me know. And then it all just fell apart. So I don't know, I never knew exactly what happened there, but I just knew that I could no longer be a part of that. It was too much. It was too much. Again, back to stress, back to anxiety, back to wondering, are we going to make it through today, let alone, the shows that we have on the books for the next 6 months or the next 2 months. It was just, can we get through today was the problem. And that was tough.
Yeah, and you choose to take the high road talking about it. I don't think anything comes out of saying, well, this guy did this and this was a pain in the ass. I think it's better to take that high road. And so Mark went out as the Bulletboys, as he's done many times with different
Right.
lineups.
Right.
And, as you said, I think the power of a reunion was that all 4 of you were there. And
Yeah.
it's very rare in this industry. And so, okay, you get different people and it doesn't work. And so at the end of the day, now Lonnie Vincent is back with
Yeah.
Mark.
Hmm.
I don't know how it's going. I don't know. Have you spoke to either one of those guys recently?
I haven't spoke to anyone since when I quit back then. I have not spoke to anyone. I think that those two should just figure out how to make it work. I think they're good for each other. That's Mark and Lonnie, that is. But I have not spoke to anybody from that camp at all.
Is there any chance you would do it again?
I mean, I said there was no chance back in '99. I said there was no chance in 2010. I said there was no chance. You know, I can't say that. I just know that right now, where I'm at is I'm trying to, finish out George Lynch's Lynch Mob career, just the Lynch Mob career. And that's my only focus at this point. I have a couple of things that I'll be sharing with people down the line who I'm playing drums for, and a couple, I got a couple things that are lined up, and I'll share those when the time's appropriate. But a lot would have to change for me with Bullet Boys. A lot would have to there have to be one singular person that everything has to funnel through, so that, like you said, that we don't all have to hang out. We don't have to get into arguments about songs. We don't have to get into arguments about who writes what song, or who's going to take care, who's going to buy the flights. It just, if somebody takes care of that and the money is absolutely undeniable, and everyone's in good shape, and everybody's getting a better, has a better head on their shoulders. I can't say, no, I can't say anything for that matter. A lot would have to happen for me.
Yeah, well, it's smart. You keep, you keep an open mind as much as
Yeah.
you can. Now you're in Austin, Texas right now. Lynch Mob final ride. George Lynch is going to put Lynch Mob to bed at some point. This final ride's been going on for a little while, but that's part of saying goodbye. Trying to go to as many places as you can. And
Right.
George Lynch is a character. To put it mildly, I love the guy. He's one of the most popular interviews on this show, 100,000
Absolutely is. Absolutely
views,
is.
and it's he's hard to describe,
Yeah.
and he's hard. Even and in the interview, even though I've known him and I knew how he is, he still got me. I still had to ask him, "Are you being serious?" Because he's so dry. And I asked Jeff Pilson, "Was he like this in Dokken?" And he said, "Always. George
Yeah.
always liked to get a rise and be very dry and see what he can say." Now you travel with him on and off for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell me a little bit about working with George Lynch.
Uh, tell you a little bit about working with. I don't know if that's possible to go a little bit, but it's everything that you just said. There is, to me, there's nothing more hysterical than when somebody new to the fold comes in, and he starts doing all that dry stuff again to them, and they're literally, like, you could see their brain scrambling trying to process what he's telling them. And then at one point, now, because I can't take it, I literally, like, I can't, it's making me crazy, like I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. Then I have to lean over and tap them and go, he's just joking. He's joking. And George goes, why do you tell him that? Don't tell him. Because he wants it to go as far as possible. um Listen, it's fun as hell, especially, and I'll tell you, and it's bittersweet right now. That's the thing about it, because it's getting even more fun right now. The last show is March 15th. Dude, that's literally just a little over a month away. That's the last Lynch Mob show. And it's, we're having, and every now and again, and it hits us, it does hit me, and me and George in particular, because we were driving home one night, because usually, not home, back to the hotel, which is home. But usually after every show, me and George have a car waiting for us, and then I normally will drive, or maybe he'll drive sometimes. But it's way out in the back of the venue. We finish the show, and then put our stuff on, and then get into a vehicle, and head back to the hotel. And on one of the shows recently, it was a heartfelt, Jimmy, thank you for being a part of this ride with me, dude. He goes, I still have as much fun with you today as I did before. And listen, don't get me wrong, me and George have had some really intense situations. We've had some arguments that were really not good. They were very unhealthy. And but the difference was, and this is the honest to God truth, I care about him beyond music. Like, if he puts this down, I don't care. I'll still call him and say, "Do you want to get some food? Do you want, dude? What book are you reading? What movies are you watching?" We still do that. So that's the difference. When we had our fights, and we would kind of reconnect at one point, and it was never like, neither of us were like eager to get back to play with each other. It was just like, "How are you?" "I'm good. How are you? How are the kids? How are the grandkids?" "Good. How's Lorraine? How's Max?" We would talk for a while, and then over the course of, like, time, like, what's the saying about time healing all wounds? And then, he'd call me and go, hey, because do you want to come back and play for me? I'm like, absolutely. You know, I'm available. I would love that. And here's the big thing about that. Here's the thing that I think in all relationships, I don't care, man, woman, man, and child, parent, whatever. You have to learn from those mistakes. That's it. Otherwise, you're going to keep repeating those same fights. We've had 3 really all out fights. We've never repeated those fights. We learned from that first one, learned from the second one, and the last one, and I'm telling you, there won't be another one because we now know literally everything as far as working together as musicians, how to talk, how to be when someone says this, how I respond, vice versa. And that again, we're having more fun. We're laughing our fucking ass off on stage some nights. We are literally like, I'm crying looking at the snare drum, like crying, laughing, trying, not to lose the beat. And here it's coming to the end. It's March 15th. It's the Monster Rock cruise on the boat. There'll be a last thing, and I know he won't want this and he won't like it, but I might get up and give a little speech about my time working with him and a little something else.
If you had to say what do you think George's most interesting quirk is, what would you say?
Wow.
I mean, I don't know how much of it he's been public about.
Yeah.
And I said to him, George, you got to come back because we got a lot more to talk about. And then I saw him and he goes, hey, did we ever do that second interview? I'm like, no. In his mind somewhere, he might have thought it.
Yeah.
And this is the same guy who once told me as he was driving down a sign that said, do not enter. And I said, George, I don't think you can enter. And he said, I don't think that applies to us at this time. And he told me that he once got a library book on ethics, but he forgot to return it. I think that's a Stephen Wright joke. But
That is. That is.
But but Mr. Scary is definitely way more interesting than people think. I think, Jimmy, in case you didn't think of one, I think his flying habits are strange.
Okay. So, did he tell you about the flight where he got out of the plane while he was on the tarmac?
No.
We had the worst flight that I've ever had. I've been flying since like Bulletboys '88. Been flying since then, and I've never had a flight that was this bad. I mean, it was so bad that you could hear a pin drop on this plane because we were getting tail wind shears that were pushing the plane like this. And whilst we were trying to land, so the plane was like nose diving like this down to the ground, and then they would have to then just do this and go straight up. And it physically on your body, it makes you, it's like the weirdest, like equilibrium fucking throw up. And they did it once, and they did it twice, they did it 3 times. And by this time, I'm telling you, I thought we were going to die. I'm not gonna lie. I thought like we're not gonna make it. We're gonna try to make a landing and we're gonna die. And they after the last time, it was like, I mean, you could hear people crying. You could hear people crying. That's how bad it was. Okay. And then so finally we land like after like I don't know how many times, like maybe 6 times. And George got up while the plane was and got up and opened the door to get out. And immediately the police airport cats rush out there, and luckily because it was such a hellacious landing experience, they didn't arrest him. They just knew that, okay, this man is having a difficult time with this, and let's just help him get off the plane and from that. Oh, we ended up having to land at a different airport. So George, they put us on a different plane to go somewhere else now to get to our final destination. George rents a vehicle that and ends up driving. I want to say like 15 hours to the next. He's like, I'm not getting back on a fucking plane, dude. And I didn't blame him. But that
Yeah,
was a.
he's known for that. He likes to sit in the first seat on the plane. That's one thing he does. If he doesn't get to what he likes, because one time I had him booked for a gig in Vegas, Sin City Sinners, and he called me and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to need you to go to the airport and essentially steal my head I mean, two heads that are going to come through the conveyor belt. And I go, well, where are you going to be? And he didn't complete. It was a sort of a need to know basis. But what he did was he didn't like his seat on the plane.
Yeah.
He went and rented a car to drive to Vegas, but
Yeah.
his amps were already on the way,
Yeah.
and I had to go and pick them up. I think he's obviously he's an incredible musician, but boy, he's an interesting character. And like you said, if you don't know him,
Yeah.
boy, you could think we convinced one of the guys in the band, Brent Muscat from Faster Pussycat. We convinced him that George was mad at him, and it just went on forever and ever. I would be failed to not share this picture because we also convinced him that Lemmy hated him, and here is a picture. People wake up the next day from a party and go, "Boy, that was some party," but not many people wake up the next day and go, "Wait a second, I was hanging out with Lemmy and Eddie Van Halen."
You know, I got to tell you, that whole week I was hanging out with Eddie at One-on-One Studio. I went down to get some rough demos of the second Bulletboys record, and Eddie was in there with Templeman producing a band called Private Life. Oddly enough, the girl singer was Lonnie Vincent, the bass from Bulletboys. It was his wife. So um, I got to meet those cats, but that right there is at a movie premiere. And I remember because from the afternoon, I'd hung out with Ed, and he taught me how to drink a Mickey's Big Mouth. And they're literally only about 2 or 3 inches in height, but the opening to the mouth is like you could drown in this thing. So we had been drinking all day, and then Ed says, and that's what he was wearing all day, by the way. What Ed's
Mhm.
wearing right there. And he goes, dude, he goes, let's go to this thing. I go, absolutely. I mean, Ed says go, you go. And then I was off to the side, and again, I can't think if it was the photographer or Ed that goes, dude, get in the picture. And then boom, there I am, fucking drinking beers, telling stories, listening to these guys tell stories, and just going, I mean, I wish I could tell little Jimmy DeAnda at 13 years old, dude, your life is going to become so fucking epic one day, you won't even believe it.
It's incredible, and you're looking at these two legends
Yeah.
who, they look so full of life.
Yep.
You never
I
would
mean,
think of these guys as being
look how
gone.
tanned Lemmy is. Oh my God.
Mhm. Oh, he looked like he just got off the beach. He had a Mai Tai,
Yeah. He's a
Maker's Mark
lamb.
Mai Tai. Yeah, what an
Love him.
amazing moment. And so many of those things, just what you said, if you could go back and
Yeah.
tell your younger self one day, this is going to happen, or these things are going to work out, it sure would have made life easier. So
Right?
you said that there's some projects coming up you're not ready to announce.
Right.
We're going to let Lynch Mob, your run with Lynch Mob, finish,
Exactly. Exactly.
and then hopefully you'll come back and talk about new projects.
Yes.
I know the last thing you wanted to do was say, you know what, I'm going to recap my whole career with the Bullet Boys again. And so next time we'll talk about the next chapter in your life. You've still got it. Fans still love seeing you play, and there's more to come.
Yeah. Again, I'm so blessed, Jason. I mean, I think about it every now and again when I started this journey back in 1980, late 87, early 88, and to know that I'm still in beautiful hotel rooms. We're in Austin. We're going to play, great sold out shows. I still meet great people like yourself. Even at this stage of my career, I'm getting to sit in with Stephen Piercy. It's just, to me, um, it's that old adage about quitters never giving up, and I'm sorry, winners never quit and quitters never win. uh and I'm glad I never gave up. I'm glad, I got clean and sober 23 years ago. I was on my way out the door. I think that had I not been done that, I know I would never have got to experience all this beautiful life that is available to me. So again, I thank you, because you were great in helping me with Piercy. You were great, in that whole experience, because I was a fish out of water for the most part. And you and your better half, uh, made it absolutely fun. We were having dinners every night. To me, that's a big
We
part
had
of
a
the experience
great
of getting
time.
to go out and do tours and stuff. Is like you guys get together for dinner and we talk about great movies we've seen and books and concerts we went to. Remember when we were kids, we saw this. That's a part of, like, to me, like I go home and tell my wife, oh honey, Jason said to go see this one movie, or get this one book or something. That to me is the cool stuff, the added stuff that I love, that I get to experience today. So again, thank you for having me on, and definitely thank you for that experience.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. And I said it at the top. I'll say it at the end. You're a class act, and I'm grateful for the time we spend. And I'm looking forward to coming back and talking about the next things in your career.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see